My name is Sultana Layla. I turned 22 on November 2nd, 2020, when my entire existence collapsed. Born into the Saudi royal family, I was fourth in line to the throne. Raised in palaces worth $50 million, I possessed every imaginable luxury. However, I was about to face a devastating reality. On that fateful morning, I realized I wasn't a royal heir. I was family property destined to be shared among 5 of my relatives, like a trophy circulating between them. I thought I understood the meaning of anguish, but I had no idea of the hell that awaited me. This is the story of how Jesus Christ freed me from a torment I never conceived possible. Let me tell you about the shining prison where I lived before the catastrophe. From my earliest steps, I was surrounded by opulence that most people only know from movies. Our main residence in Riyadh displayed marble floors imported from Italy and chandeliers that cost more than entire homes. Servants attended to my every need. I had an exclusive wing with 12 rooms, a private library, and closets overflowing with haute couture from Paris and Milan. However, splendor has the power to blind you to the bars of your cage. My father, Prince Rashid, was brother to the petroleum minister, meaning our dynasty controlled billions in government contracts. Power flowed in our veins like oil through pipelines. I was taught from birth that I was special, chosen, favored by Allah for being born into nobility. Every dawn, at daybreak, I awakened to the call to prayer echoing through our estate. By age 7, I performed the 5 daily prayers without fail. My private Islamic instructor, a strict woman named Teacher Aisha, ensured I memorized the entire Quran. By age 15, I recited verses in flawless Arabic about submission, obedience, and Allah's will for devoted women. I believed every sentence. When Teacher Aisha told me that Allah had placed me in this privileged position to fulfill His purposes, I felt pride. When she explained that women obedient to fathers and husbands would be rewarded in paradise, I agreed fervently. I believed my rigorous Islamic education was preparing me for a blessed existence. But consider this question. When does security transform into imprisonment? I began to notice disturbing aspects near my 18th birthday. My male cousins were sent to universities in London and New York. But when I asked about studying abroad, my father's expression turned dark. He declared that Western education would corrupt my pure Islamic heart, and that I had everything necessary within our family compound. The compound itself resembled a small city. High walls with barbed wire surrounded our property. Armed guards monitored every entrance. They told me they protected our family from enemies and kidnappers. But I started to notice these guards closely tracked my movements. If I walked toward the main gate, they gently redirected me to the family quarters. If I conversed too long with the maids, they interrupted our dialogue. My uncles controlled a commercial empire stretching across the Middle East. Uncle Ibrahim owned construction companies that built half of Dubai's skyscrapers. Uncle Mahmoud held exclusive contracts to supply the royal military. Uncle Samir managed our petroleum investments. During family gatherings, I watched these powerful men make decisions affecting thousands of jobs and millions of dollars. The women in our family played a completely different role. My mother, Princess Nadia, was beautiful and elegant, but never voiced an opinion during negotiations. She sat silently with folded hands and lowered eyes while the men planned and decided. When I questioned why she didn't share her thoughts, she responded that it wasn't a woman's place to challenge male wisdom. I had female cousins my age, but one by one, they disappeared from family gatherings. When I asked where my cousin Hannah had gone, they told me she received the blessing of a good marriage. When my cousin Noor stopped attending our women's meetings, the explanation was always identical. Marriage, blessed arrangements, Allah's will being fulfilled. At 20, I was the only unmarried woman of my generation, still residing on the family grounds. This should have alerted me, but they said I was too precious, too important to be given to just any man. My father stated, Allah had special plans for me that would bring great honor to our name. The isolation intensified monthly. Childhood friends no longer had permission to visit. When I requested to visit them, they informed me their families were far beneath our social standing. My phone calls were monitored by employees listening on another line. My internet access was restricted to approved Islamic educational sites and family business pages. I began having peculiar encounters with my older cousins. These men, all in their 30s and 40s, came to our residence and requested private conversations with me in the formal living room. They asked strange questions about my health, my daily routines, whether I was happy living with my parents. I imagined they were just showing family concern, but something in their gazes gave me chills. Conversations ceased abruptly whenever I entered rooms where my father and uncles were talking. I caught fragments of phrases about schedules, arrangements, and maintaining pure bloodlines. When I questioned my mother about it, she quickly changed topics and suggested we pray together. Look into your own heart right now, and imagine the fear growing as the walls close around you. The guards became more restrictive regarding my movements. The servants began watching me constantly. My bedroom window had decorative bars that were, in reality, quite functional. I inhabited a beautiful prison, and didn't even understand what crime I'd supposedly committed. The last freedom I lost was hope. When you're told daily that your life is blessed, that Allah has wonderful plans for you, but you feel more imprisoned each week, you begin to question everything. I kept praying more fervently, reading the Quran more, trying to be a better Muslim daughter. I thought that if I was faithful enough, Allah would show me why I was being kept like a bird in a golden cage. I didn't know that the true nightmare was only beginning. Reality crashed down on me on October 15th, 2020, in the most devastating way possible. I was walking near my father's office when I heard Uncle Ibrahim speaking loudly on the phone. The door was ajar, and his voice echoed through the corridor where I stood frozen, hearing words that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. The arrangement is finalized, he was saying in Arabic. She'll be divided among the 5 on a weekly basis. Mahmoud gets her on Mondays, Kareem on Tuesdays, Samir on Wednesdays, Tariq on Thursdays, and Ibrahim's son, Jalal, on Fridays. On weekends, she rests and prepares for the next week. My legs nearly gave out. I pressed my back against the cold marble wall, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. He was speaking about me as if I were a rental vehicle being scheduled between different drivers. This will keep the bloodline pure, Uncle Ibrahim continued. No outsiders, no weak genetics. If she bears male children, we'll determine paternity through DNA and decide which father keeps the child to claim the heir. The family lawyers have drafted all the contracts. I wanted to run, scream, do anything except stand there hearing my own family plot to destroy me, but my feet wouldn't move. I needed to hear everything. She doesn't know yet, does she? Asked the voice on the other end of the line, and I could hear it clearly through the phone. Prince Rashid will tell her tonight. If she resists, we have ways to convince her. Family honor and genetic legacy are more important than the girl's feelings. This is Allah's will for her. I stumbled backward, my hand over my mouth to prevent vomiting right there in the corridor. Everything made sense now. The isolation, the strange meetings, the questions about my health. They weren't evaluating me as a person. They were inspecting me like livestock. That night, my father summoned me to his private office. I sat across from his enormous desk, trying to maintain composure on my face while my soul was screaming. He poured himself tea and looked at me with the same gaze I'd always known. What I'd thought was paternal love, I now recognized as possession. Layla, my daughter, you've reached the age when Allah's plan for your life must be fulfilled. He began. His voice was gentle, as if he were giving me wonderful news. Our family has been blessed with wealth and power for generations because we keep our bloodline pure and strong. I knew what was coming, but hearing it from my own father's mouth was like being stabbed with a flaming knife. You will be shared among your 5 cousins in a rotating system that will honor our family traditions and ensure that any children you bear possess the strongest possible royal genetics. This is a great privilege, Layla. You will be the mother of future princes. Ask yourself this question. How would you react if your own father told you the purpose of your life was to be passed from hand to hand like a trophy among 5 men? I stared at him, waiting for him to laugh, to tell me this was some horrible joke. But his eyes were completely serious. I won't do this, I said, my voice barely a whisper. His face darkened immediately. This is not a request, daughter. This is Allah's will and your family's decision. You will do this willingly, or you will do this by force, but you will do it. I tried to reason with him. I begged him to remember that I was his daughter, not his property. I cited Quran verses about Allah's mercy and love. I promised to be a good wife to one man if he would arrange a real marriage. Nothing I said mattered. He explained that Islamic law gave him complete authority over my life until I was transferred to a husband, and in this case, I was being transferred to 5 husbands simultaneously. He had consulted religious scholars who confirmed this arrangement was permitted under Sharia law for the preservation of royal bloodlines. The decision is made, Layla. Tomorrow you'll be moved to quarters prepared in the East Wing. Your cousins have already arranged the schedule. I ran to my mother's room, tears streaming down my face, and threw myself at her feet. I told her everything, begging her to intervene, to protect me, to be my mother instead of just another silent woman in this family. She held me while I sobbed, stroking my hair as she used to when I was small. For a moment I thought she would help me. Then she said words that destroyed my last hope. This is very difficult, my daughter, but we must trust that Allah knows what's best for our family. Your sacrifice will bring honor to generations of our lineage. I'll pray that you find peace in accepting His will. Even my own mother saw me as an acceptable sacrifice for family honor. Look into your own heart right now and imagine discovering that everyone who claimed to love you actually saw you as an object to be used. The 5 cousins who would share me were all married men with children. Mahmoud was 34 and had beaten his wife so violently she needed surgery. Kareem was 28 and notorious for his cruelty to servants. Samir was 45 and had already divorced 2 wives for not producing male heirs. They weren't men who would treat me with kindness or respect. They had been promised access to a royal woman for their pleasure, and they had paid generously for this privilege through various business deals with my father and uncles. The next morning, servants transferred my belongings to a luxurious prison in the east wing of our compound. The rooms were beautiful, but the windows had bars. The doors locked from the outside. Armed guards were positioned in the corridor, not to protect me, but to ensure I couldn't escape. A schedule was posted on the wall as if it were a conference room being booked for meetings. Monday through Friday, each day belonged to a different cousin. Weekends were for rest and preparation. Medical examinations were scheduled monthly to monitor my health and check for pregnancy. I was no longer Sultana Layla. I was a breeding vessel for the royal family bloodline. The golden cage had become a nightmare beyond anything I could have imagined. And according to everyone around me, this was Allah's blessed will for my life. The arrangement officially began on Monday, October 26, 2020, when my cousin Mahmoud arrived at my prison with a smile that gave me chills. He was 34, married, and had 3 children. He entered my quarters as if entering a hotel room he'd paid for himself, because that's exactly what I was to him. "Good morning, Sultana," he said. His voice overflowed with false respect. "I hope you understand how honored you should feel. Not every woman has this opportunity to serve the royal family in such an important way." I had spent the previous night on my knees, praying to Allah with every fiber of my being, begging Him to intervene, cause an earthquake, a fire, anything to prevent what was about to happen. But the sun rose anyway, and Mahmoud walked through my door, right on schedule. The first thing he did was establish the rules. I couldn't speak unless addressed. I shouldn't resist or complain. I should remember that my purpose was to produce strong children for the royal bloodline. If I cooperated, he would treat me with relative gentleness. If I resisted, he had permission from my father to use whatever force necessary. Your father and I have a mutual understanding, he said, sitting in the chair across from which I stood trembling. You belong to this family, and this family has invested too much in you to let you ruin our plans with childish rebellion. I tried to maintain some dignity, to remember that I was a human being with thoughts, feelings, and rights. But when I tried to reason with him, explaining that I had never agreed to this arrangement, he laughed in a way that chilled me to my bones. Layla, you don't seem to understand your position. You are property. Valuable property, yes, but property nonetheless. Your father owns you until you produce heirs, and then your sons will be the family legacy. Your feelings about this are as irrelevant as a horse's opinion about which rider mounts its back. The week with Mahmoud was a preview of hell. He treated me as if I existed solely for his convenience and pleasure. He arrived every morning and evening, using me as he pleased, then leaving me alone, counting the hours until his next visit. He brought files to review while I sat silently in the corner, as if I were furniture in his makeshift office. When Tuesday came, Karim replaced Mahmoud, and I discovered that cruelty has many faces. Karim was younger, but somehow crueler. He seemed to delight in my fear, and would say things deliberately intended to break me down further. You know what I like about this arrangement? He told me on the second day. I get all the benefits of having you without any of the responsibilities. When I'm tired of you, I simply leave and let the next cousin deal with your tears. By Wednesday, when Samir's turn came, I had stopped eating regularly. Food tasted like ashes in my mouth. He was the oldest at 45 and treated the entire situation as a business transaction. He would review my medical history, analyze files, discuss breeding plans, and study genetic compatibility charts as if I were livestock. The family has invested significant resources in your maintenance and education, he informed me while reviewing his paperwork. My father estimates that raising you has cost approximately $2 million. This arrangement ensures the investment yields dividends for generations. Ask yourself, have you ever felt so completely worthless that you forgot you were human? When Thursday arrived with my cousin Tariq, I stopped looking at myself in the mirror. The woman reflected there was a stranger with lifeless eyes and a broken spirit. I didn't recognize myself anymore. Tariq was perhaps the most disturbing because he pretended to be kind. He brought me gifts, spoke to me softly, and acted as if this arrangement were a love story instead of systematic abuse. His false kindness was more degrading than the other's open cruelty. I know this is difficult for you, Layla, he would say while stroking my hair as if I were a pet, but you'll learn to accept it. Women in our family have played this role for centuries. It's in your blood to submit and serve. Friday brought Jalal, Uncle Ibrahim's son, who was only 28, but had already learned to treat women as objects by watching his father and uncles. He was the worst of all because he was close to my age, but felt entitled to use me like the older men did. The weekends, which were supposedly rest periods, became times of desperate planning. I paced my beautiful prison, trying to think of ways to escape, ways to die, ways to disappear. The guards outside my door were there 24 hours a day. The windows were barred. The doors were locked from the outside. I tried to escape twice during those first weeks. The first time I tried to exit through the window at night, forgetting about the bars until my hands were bleeding from trying to bend them. The second time, I hid in a laundry cart, but the servants discovered me before I left the building. Both escape attempts resulted in punishment, reduced food, complete isolation, and threats against my younger sister if I tried again. They made it clear that my resistance would bring consequences not just for me, but for the other women in my family. Look now. right into your own heart, at the loss of every trace of who you used to be. I stopped praying to Allah because I couldn't understand how a merciful God would allow this to happen to one of his faithful daughters. I had memorized his holy book, followed his laws, trusted in his protection, and this was my reward. The Quran spoke of paradise for obedient women, but I was living in hell despite being perfectly obedient. I had submitted to my father, accepted my family's authority, and followed Islamic law exactly as I was taught. Yet I was being destroyed piece by piece. By early November, I had completely lost hope. I realized this would be my life until death. I would be passed from one man to another until my body gave out, or until I produced enough male heirs to satisfy the family's genetic ambitions. There was no rescue in sight, no escape possible, no mercy to be found. I decided that death was the only door they couldn't lock. On November 1st, 2020, I stole a kitchen knife during dinner preparation. That night, after the house fell silent, I sat on my bed with the blade in my trembling hands, finally ready to take control of the only choice I had left. I wrote a farewell letter to my younger sister, warning her to flee if they tried to do this to her. I had lost everything that made me human. I was no longer Sultana Layla. I was just a broken shell, waiting for the courage to end my suffering. I thought I knew what it meant to be at rock bottom, but I was about to discover that sometimes you must reach the depths of hell for heaven to descend and save you. At exactly 3:17 a.m. on November 2nd, 2020, I sat on my bed with the knife pressed against my wrist, ready to end the nightmare my life had become. I had written my final letter, said my last prayers to a God who seemed deaf to my suffering, and prepared myself to take the only escape route left to me. Then my room filled with light. I'm not talking about someone turning on a lamp or opening a door. This light had no earthly source. It was brilliant and warm, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once, filling every corner of my locked prison with a glow that made the expensive chandeliers seem like dying candles. The light didn't hurt my eyes, but I dropped the knife in shock. A figure walked through my locked door as if made of mist. He was tall, wearing robes whiter than fresh snow, and his face radiated a love and compassion I had never seen in any human being. His hands bore scars that looked like nail wounds, and when he looked at me, I felt like the most precious person in the entire universe. My daughter, he said in perfect Arabic, his voice carrying an authority that made my soul recognize him immediately. I see your suffering. I should have been terrified. According to everything I'd been taught about Islam, this was either a demon trying to deceive me, or I was having a complete mental breakdown. But instead of fear, I felt for the first time in months an overwhelming sense of safety. Who are you? I whispered, though somehow I already knew the answer. I am Jesus, whom your people call Isa, he replied, kneeling beside my bed so we were face to face. I am the one who died for you, the one who loves you beyond measure, who witnessed every tear you shed in this place. Ask yourself this question. Have you ever encountered a presence so pure and loving that it made you realize you had never truly understood what love meant before? That's what happened when Jesus looked into my eyes. All the lies I'd been told about my worthlessness crumbled before his infinite compassion. But I'm Muslim, I said, confusion mixing with the growing hope in my chest. You shouldn't care about me. Allah is supposed to be my God. Jesus smiled with a tenderness that moved me deeply. I came to earth for Muslim women too, Layla. I came to set captives free, heal broken hearts, give hope to the hopeless. You are not property. You are my beloved daughter. He reached out and touched my face, and I felt years of shame and degradation washing away like mud in a river. For the first time since this nightmare began, I remembered what it felt like to be treated as a precious human being, not as an object. I watched every moment of your torment.
Sabe, às vezes penso
Jesus
que a
continued.
simplicidade nos
I
conecta
felt
mais
every pain they
profundamente.
inflicted on you. I
I
know what it means to be mistreated by those who should protect you. I know what it means to be betrayed by those who claim to love you. He showed me his scarred hands. And suddenly I understood that this wasn't just a distant, cold divinity like the Allah I had prayed to all my life. This was someone who had experienced human suffering firsthand, who understood my pain, because he had endured his own agony. Where were you? I asked, the question that had consumed my heart for weeks. Why didn't you stop this from happening to me? I was here, daughter. I've been here every moment, weeping with you, wiping away every tear, preparing an escape route that will free not just your body but transform your soul as well. Sometimes salvation doesn't come from preventing the storm, but from walking through it with you and bringing you safely to the other side. Jesus then showed me visions that changed everything I thought I knew about how God sees women. I saw him talking with the woman at the well, treating her with respect and dignity despite her past. I saw him defend the woman caught in adultery when religious men wanted to stone her. I witnessed his first appearance to Mary Magdalene after his resurrection, making a woman the first witness of his victory over death. In my kingdom, he said, women are not property to be owned. They are daughters to be loved. You are no less important than men in my eyes. You are equally precious, equally loved, equally valued. Look into your own heart right now. Try to imagine how it felt to hear these words after months of being treated like cattle. Every Quran verse about women's submission and obedience suddenly seems small and limiting compared to this revolutionary message of equality and love. I will make a way where there seems to be no way, Jesus promised, his voice filled with unshakable certainty. But first, you need to choose. Will you follow me? Will you trust me, even if it means leaving behind everything you've known? Will you accept me as your savior, even though your family will consider it a betrayal of tradition? Tears streamed down my face, no longer from despair, but from something I hadn't felt in months, hope. Here was someone offering not just escape from my physical prison, but liberation from the spiritual prison that had bound me since birth. Yes, I whispered, my voice gaining strength. Yes, I will follow you. I don't care about the cost. You see me as human. You love me. That's more than anyone in this family ever did. Jesus smiled, and the light around us grew even brighter. Then you are mine now, Layla. Not property of any man, but my beloved sister, daughter of the Most High God. What comes next won't be easy, but I will be with you every step of the way. He placed his hand on my head. I felt something shift deep within me. It was as if invisible chains that had bound me for years were breaking. The fear that had dominated my existence began transforming into a courage that wasn't mine, but came from him. Tomorrow afternoon, Jesus instructed me, one of the servants will leave the side door unlocked for exactly 15 minutes at 2:30 p.m. You'll have a window of opportunity. There will be a black car waiting 3 blocks away, driven by Christians who help women escape situations like yours. They'll take you to safety. But the guards will see, I protested. The cameras will catch me. Trust me, Jesus said, with a smile that radiated absolute peace. I'll handle the details. You just need to walk in obedience when the moment comes. He began to fade, the light gradually diminishing, before disappearing completely. His last words echoed in my room. Remember, Layla, you were never what they said you were. You are who I say you are. And I say you are mine, precious, beloved, and free. When the light faded and my room returned to normal darkness, the knife still lay on the floor where I dropped it. But now I looked at it not as an instrument of escape through death, but as evidence that I had been on the edge of the abyss before heaven intervened. I slept few hours that night, but for the first time in months, I had no nightmares.
Sabe, às vezes penso
I dreamed of
que a
open fields,
simplicidade nos conecta mais
unlimited
profundamente.
horizons, and freedom. The next morning, November 2nd, I woke with renewed determination. It was my 22nd birthday, and it would be the day of my liberation or my destruction.
Sabe, às vezes
Either way,
penso que a
I would no longer
simplicidade
be
nos
passive
conecta
in my
mais
own story.
profundamente.
Mahmoud arrived for his scheduled visit, but for the first time, I didn't tremble when he entered. There was something
Sabe, às
different about
vezes
me that he
penso
couldn't
que a
identify.
simplicidade nos
I
conecta
looked him
mais
in the eyes instead of looking away. When he tried to intimidate me with his usual threats, I stood firm. "You're acting strange today," he
Sabe, às
commented
vezes penso
suspiciously.
que a simplicidade
"I
nos
hope you're not
conecta
planning
mais
another one of your
profundamente.
childish escape attempts."
No,
I replied honestly. "I'm not planning anything you could prevent." He seemed satisfied with that answer, not perceiving the deeper meaning. After he
Sabe,
left
às
at
vezes
noon,
penso que
I began
a
my
simplicidade
preparations.
nos conecta mais
I dressed in
profundamente.
simple clothes, no jewelry, nothing that would identify me as royalty. I placed identity documents in a secret
Sabe,
pocket.
às vezes penso
I wrote
que
one
a
last letter to my
simplicidade nos
sister,
conecta mais
hiding it under the
profundamente.
mattress where she could find it during the inevitable search that would happen after my escape. At 2:15 p.m., I began walking
Sabe,
casually
às
down the
vezes
corridor.
penso que a simplicidade
My
nos
heart
conecta
pounded
mais
violently,
profundamente.
but I kept my face calm. The guards watched me, but since I wasn't running or acting suspiciously, they didn't immediately stop me. At 2:28 p.m., I reached the side door Jesus had mentioned. 2 minutes remaining.
Sabe, às vezes
I stood
penso
pretending to
que
look at a painting on the
simplicidade nos
wall,
conecta mais
counting the
profundamente.
seconds, praying silently. At exactly 2:30 p.m., I heard the distinct click of a lock being unlatched.
Sabe, às vezes penso que
I looked
a
around.
simplicidade nos conecta
The guard
mais
who normally
profundamente.
stood positioned in this corridor was absent. The security cameras that should catch me were pointed in the wrong direction. Put yourself in my place for a moment. Imagine being about to walk through the door between slavery and freedom, knowing that if you're caught, the punishment will be worse than death. I pushed the door. It opened. I stepped out into the afternoon sunlight, feeling the warmth on my face for the first time in months without bars blocking the rays. Every step away from that building felt impossible, as if I were walking through a dream that could shatter at any moment. 3 blocks. Jesus had said 3 blocks. I walked quickly, but without running, keeping my head down, my heart hammering so loudly I was certain everyone around could hear it. 2 blocks. 1 block. And then I saw it. A simple black car with dark windows, engine running, exactly where Jesus said it would be. A middle-aged woman was at the wheel. When she saw me, she waved discreetly. I ran the last few meters and dove into the back seat. The door had barely closed when she accelerated, driving away from the compound that had been my prison. "Are you Layla?" she asked in Arabic with a Western accent. "Yes," I managed to say, barely believing I had actually escaped. "My name is Sarah. I'm a Christian, and part of an underground network that rescues women from abuse. Jesus told me in a vision this morning that you would need help today. We're taking you to safety. Look at this. A woman I'd never met, risking her own safety, because Jesus told her to save me. This was the kind of love Jesus had spoken about. Love that sacrifices for others. As the car sped through Riyadh's streets, I turned to look out the rear window. I could see the top of the family compound disappearing in the distance. In that moment, I left behind not just a physical place, but an entire identity built on lies. I was no longer Sultana Layla, property of the royal family, destined to be divided among 5 men. I was simply Layla, daughter of the living God, free from chains I hadn't even realized I was wearing. The next hours were a blur of car changes, safe houses, and secret journeys. The underground Christian network worked with military precision, moving me through a chain of trusted allies. Each person who helped me risked everything, imprisonment or death, to set me free. That night, I hid in a safe apartment while the network finalized false documents and made arrangements to get me out of the country. Sarah stayed with me, sharing her own story of escaping an abusive marriage years earlier. Jesus has a special
Sabe, às
plan for you,
vezes
Layla.
penso que a
She told me,
simplicidade nos
as we
conecta
sat
mais
together in the
profundamente.
darkness, awaiting the next step. He didn't save you just so you could be safe. He saved you so you could help save others. 3 days passed in various safe houses before I finally crossed the border into Jordan with a forged passport. From there, I went to Turkey, and eventually to a Western country where I could apply for asylum as a refugee fleeing gender-based abuse. The asylum process took months. I lived in temporary shelters, learning to navigate a world completely different from the one I grew up in. Everything was strange. The freedom to leave without permission, the ability to make my own decisions, even the simple act of choosing my own clothes without someone's approval. But the greatest change was happening inside my heart. Sarah connected me with an underground church that ministered specifically to Muslim refugees. There I met dozens of others who, like me, had encountered Jesus in miraculous ways. I heard stories of visions, dreams, supernatural interventions that defied rational explanation. An Afghan man described how Jesus appeared to him in a prison cell where he was being tortured for his faith. An Iranian woman told how Jesus healed her of terminal cancer after doctors had given up. A young Syrian man recounted how Jesus literally guided him through a minefield during the war, telling him exactly where to step. Think about this. Why would Jesus appear to so many Muslims? Why would he reveal himself specifically to those who were taught to reject him? I found the answer in the scriptures I began studying voraciously. Jesus said he came to seek and save the lost. He sought out those whom society rejected: prostitutes, tax collectors, lepers, women, the marginalized and broken. And today, he still seeks those who are imprisoned, no matter what their religious background. 6 months after my escape, I was baptized in a private ceremony with a dozen other ex-Muslims. As the water covered me, symbolizing my death to the old life and rebirth in Christ, I cried tears of joy I never imagined feeling again. The old Layla, the one who defined herself by her royal position, by her obedience to family traditions, by her attempt to earn Allah's approval through perfect submission, was buried in that water. The new Layla, defined by Christ's love, accepted not for her actions but for his sacrifice, emerged free. My family, of course, searched everywhere for me. They hired private investigators, used their government contacts, tried to track me through international records. The Christian network that rescued me helped me change identities, moving me between safe houses until I could establish legal residence under witness protection. I received indirect news that my family had declared me dead, as it was less shameful than admitting I had fled and become a Christian. My mother, they told me, wept for days. My younger sister was placed under even stricter surveillance to ensure she didn't follow.